Hello and welcome back to this course of videos on Node.js. In this video we will be publishing our Node app to a remote server, something called a VPS, a virtual private server, and my choice of VPS is actually DigitalOcean. Now if we switch back to the code that we were writing, our server.js file, we'll see that we were setting up our server to listen on localhost 27001. Now, localhost is just a server on your local computer. However, we no longer want to serve pages from our local server. We want to serve pages from our VPS. So we want to change this code here to be listening, so the server is listening on our VPS. Obviously, we need the URL of our VPS. So in order to get that, I'm going to go back to DigitalOcean. I'm going to log in to my account as I already have an account with DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean has things called droplets, which are basically servers. So you can see here, James Murphy droplet, this is my server, and I have already installed Node and NPM on my droplet server. Here is my IP address, so this is the IP address that we want to copy and add to our server.js. I'm going to do that right now. So the server is instead going to be listening on this particular IP address, and I'll just change the console.log, so instead of saying localhost, it says it's listening on this particular URL. It's still going to be listening on port 8080. So the next thing we need to do now is actually get our files from where they're currently located on my C drive here, and I need to transport them up to my VPS. Now the way I'm going to do that is using a client called WinSCP. Now this is something called a Secure File Transfer Protocol, SFTP client, and what it allows me to do is connect to my VPS here, here's the URL, and actually upload files from my C drive to my VPS. So you can see here I've connected to my VPS now using WinSCP, and I'm going to take these to the folder with my static files, if you remember, my JavaScript, my CSS, and my HTML, and my core server.js. I'm going to upload these to the root folder of my VPS. Now, I say root folder here. This is actually the root folder for the James user. I went in to my VPS previously and I disabled the root account because it can be quite vulnerable to security issues, and created my James user, and this is the root for my James user. So this is where I have published my files. So, excuse me. So our files are now on our VPS. We've updated our code, so our server is going to be listening on the correct VPS. The next thing we need to do is actually run our server.js file, but we need to run the file that is on the VPS. So I can't just go into my command prompt or terminal and run my server.js, which is residing on the VPS. I need to connect to my VPS in a similar way to what I did with WinSCP, but this is a slightly different client that I'll be using. I'm actually using something called Putty. Now what Putty is going to do is it's going to give me a command prompt or terminal where I can actually write commands on my VPS. So this, I already have Putty configured for my James Murphy droplet. I'm going to load this data in. You can see again, there's my URL address. So I am now going to connect to my VPS and have, like I said, a command prompt, a CLI, where I can write commands on my VPS. I'm going to open this. So now, there you go. I am in my my James username root folder here. The folder here represents root folder. So I am actually in this folder here, Home James. So just to validate that Node and npm is actually installed on this remote server, I'm going to say node -v, which is going to give me my Node version 6.9.5, and I'm going to do the same for npm -v, and that just shows me that both Node and npm are installed. So the next thing I want to do is I want to run my server. So again, we always prefix our commands with Node, and the name of my file that I want to run is server.js. So I'm going to run that, and server is now listening on this particular URL on port 8080. So the last thing we need to do to just test is to go back to our browser. I'm going to paste in the URL. We need to specify the port again. And this should, and there you go, it's obviously we can see that my Node server on my VPS has successfully responded to our request, and it's responding back with the index.html file. It's responded back with the CSS file, you can tell by the coloring and formatting, and it's responded back with the JavaScript file, and this is how we get this dynamic text feature occurring here. And just to check that it can also handle a request for the contacts page, we're going to click this hyperlink, and there we go, it serves back my contact page. So that is how you publish your Node app to a remote server, and I look forward to seeing you in